Good afternoon, Ryan.
Good afternoon, Will. It's good to be here.
Thank you for coming, despite the cold. At least it's not negative.
At least the sun is out today.
That's true. And I drove 376 and I saw that the river was not completely frozen. So I was like, oh, okay, it's good.
The final thaw.
Yeah. And so it's been a while. We met last week or 2 weeks ago during that PMP annual meeting, So, and then I think you sent something about your newsroom, and it's like, I need to talk to Brian. So and then I sent you an invite, like, hey, come on down. Especially this journalism thing is, I don't want to say it's hot, but probably because of the Pittsburgh Gazette's closure and city paper, that a lot of events are going on. So we're gonna dive into that later on. But now let's start with Brian. So where do you live now? So I like to start with my audience, where do you live? We have 19 neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. So let's see.
So, well, first of all, Will, thanks for having me on. We have crossed paths a few times briefly in the past few weeks, but I appreciate you having me on in our old office space here at the Downtown Pittsburgh Media Hub. I had an office here for a couple of years, and I used to see Will all the time, but not as much, unfortunately, but I'm glad that you invited me on here today. As for where I'm at, I'm in the city. I'm in the Southside, and
you are.
I love it there. I'm like a few blocks back from Carson, and so I don't have to deal with all of the shenanigans that happen like late on Friday and Saturday night. And I think the neighborhood does get a bad rap because of that. Like the only time that I wouldn't want to be like on East Carson is like late on Friday or Saturday night. Right. But like, the other 98% of the time, like Southside is a really great place to live. I love the bike. So it's very flat. It's central to everything, easy to get downtown, though I haven't been biking much recently with all this snow, and tons of great restaurants, venues, and stuff like that. So I love it there.
So let's point out the I've been showing this to my audience. Carson is this is the Southside Flats?
Yeah,
that's what they call it. So if using this the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh, so officially it's the Southside Flats.
Yes. Yeah, it is separate and distinct from the Southside slopes. If I am correct.
Right. This is like a Southside Flats right here, and then there's the Southside slopes. So you're here. This is the Carson, I assume. Yep,
exactly.
Carson. Yeah. I think so. The parking over there for weekend nights are still horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would not recommend to anybody to drive into Southside late on a Friday or Saturday night.
Oh, okay. So, because of the parking or because of something else?
All of the above.
All of the above. Oh, wow. And I guess for these days, with the snow still piling up everywhere, so it's even a no-no. Right.
But it's still worth going out to, have a delicious meal or whatever it is. But just take public transportation and maybe not go on a Friday or Saturday night.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it's been a while since I went there. I don't know. I forgot. I went to the Nanxiang, I think near Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, yeah, the new soup dumpling place down Southside Works.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, my son, was visiting from New York. He's like, this place is famous. We should, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, we went there as it was just open in the morning because, according to my son, it was going to be packed. So, it's okay.
You thought it was okay?
It's okay.
I thought it was very good. I like the soup dumplings there, but there are some good, authentic, family-owned independent restaurants in the Southside. So I would prefer to go to like Tie Me Up or Dancing Crab, especially.
I went to Dancing Crab. Yep.
Both excellent. A couple other great places too. I mean, a bunch, but wonderful. If you're looking at that flavor profile. But anyway, all right. I digress.
Yeah, let's digress even further now. So we met. I don't know what year. 2017.
So when did you? I joined Work Hard at the end of 2015. Were you already there or no?
Yes. There was, the NSR, New Sun Rising, the Storyberg's fiduciary fiscal sponsored
Pittsburgh Manifold as well. Shout out to Scott Wolovich.
Oh, all right. So we are brothers. they had this incubator, right? Social enterprise incubator.
Was the Incubate Hilltop? Or?
Yeah, the Hilltop
Rising. You tell me, Will, you were in the program.
It was 10 years ago. Or, 10 years anniversary of our story work. So, yeah, so it's, I forgot the name of it. Yeah, but, it's, so there were a bunch of us. But I didn't remember that you were
I was not in that cohort. I had just joined Work Hard for the community and the studio space.
Yes, I remember your desk.
And the gigs. Yeah, I always had plants at my desk. Yeah. Just like the office right here. Full of plants.
Yeah.
So that was what made it stand out.
All right.
But we started doing I think that was the strength of Work Hard was we had so many independent creators and journalists and those types of people doing really socially minded, socially conscious work.
Right.
And that was what enabled us to collaborate in the first place.
Yes.
I had done a freelance story for you on CHS, Community Human Services in the Strip District.
Yes.
And all their great work. And that was when I first got familiar with your really person-centric brand of storytelling.
Thank you. Yes, I remember that it was a cloudy day, but I think it was a cold day, and we were planning to have a lot of more interview or photography outside, but it was not a perfect day. So, but then we had it inside, and it was still crowded. THS is a good organization for the space that they are in. So about Work Hard Pittsburgh. So let me show my audience again. I popped this screen. It's still on. The website is still on.
The website was still up.
Yeah, and people-centered incubation.
Josh must have got a deal on hosting like 20 years back in the day or something. It's going to be up until 2055.
Yeah. So I like this. I mean, just like what Brian just said. But the investing in people, not businesses, fostering values, not privilege, amplifying ideas and not egos. It was great. So I was no longer at Work Hard Pittsburgh when it went under, I think during COVID, right?
Wait, should that say people-centered incubation that used to exist?
Yes, yeah, it's missing too. So.
Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter. No one's really going to it. That's actually a nice website. Otherwise, I don't remember seeing that the investing in people values ideas instead of negative aspect of that. It's a nice website.
It is still, yeah. So
and if you've been in this space at all in the past few years, just randomly, it hasn't changed a bit. It looks exactly the same.
Yeah,
it's kind of eerie.
Let me see if they have the picture of Yoda. I mean, I know that we're.
Okay, I took that photo. Oh, I'm not in that photo because I took that photo.
All right.
That is one of the best photos I think we have, very representative of the community that we cultivated. I'm so happy to say that I'm not in direct touch with all of those people, but I'm still friends with every one of those people in that photo. That's, I think, what made it so special was that we were collective. We were working in mostly the same direction, and
right. The camaraderie was awesome.
Exactly, that's what it's really all about.
Yes. Which a lot of co-working space is trying to have that, but it's hard. Even in this space, honestly, that we like to, reminiscent with what we did at Work Hard Pittsburgh. You use that as a I don't know, like a best known method or whatever, right? But it's a good place.
Mm-hmm.
So there was. So what so as I was about to say, I was not there when it folded. It was so unfortunate. Probably COVID was part of it, one of the causes. Yeah. But can you tell me why it folded? What happened?
I mean, that's my understanding too. COVID hit, and a lot of our income came from rental space, right? Like we freelancers such as myself, and we had the cheapest rates in the city of Pittsburgh for entrepreneurs. Like it was $45 a month. Just to have monthly access to the space, and then $90 if you wanted your own private desk. I mean, that was outrageous, but that was what enabled us, freelancers who maybe didn't have that much money. I think like if you wanted space at like WeWork downtown, it was like $350 or $400 a month. I mean, like independent journalists can really afford that. Right. So I think that's what, enabled us to cultivate that special community that we have. But at the end of the day, we weren't making that much money. And then COVID hit, and what little money we were making from the office space rentals that hit. And I think it's also the nature of foundational funding, if my memory serves me correctly. It was, I remember, I wasn't involved in this, but I remember, some of the executives always sort of like hustling to get funding from the foundations. And I don't know, like if money didn't come through, or maybe we're banking on like longer term commitments, it just didn't manifest, or if COVID threw a wrench and all that, or what. But my postmortem is that was the two main factors in why Work Hard ceased to exist. It was COVID, and then the fleeting, sometimes nature of foundational funding.
Yeah. I think it's just very unfortunate. I remember several weeks or probably several months prior to COVID, I got one of the newsletter, I guess a news flash I must call it, that the Work Hard was expanding. I think they got a deal on some other property.
The building,
right?
Do you know who's in that building now?
No.
Baron Batch.
Oh.
The artist.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I understand he has a studio space and some very nice gardens, but you can't see them though because they're behind a high fence. That's my understanding.
Oh,
but
okay.
I hear there's very nice gardens in that space though. So.
All right, that's good news then.
Yeah, I guess so. For him.
Okay. So we met in 2015, 2016. So where were you before? Were you born here? Were you like a native Pittsburgh?
I grew up in the Mon Valley, went to school here, and then went to American University, and that's where I started to get into journalism.
American University in Washington, D.C.? Oh,
yeah.
All right.
I had an internship with Arabiya. They were like the second largest like pan-Arab satellite station at the time, if my memory serves me correct. And if you remember, so this was in like 2004, and this was like right around the time of the Iraq War, second Iraq War, I guess. And the Bush administration had some beef with Al Jazeera because of their coverage, and they were trying to win over hearts and minds in the Middle East, so they wouldn't give the interview to Al Jazeera, and so Al Arabiya got an interview with George W. Bush while I was an intern there.
Oh, wow.
And I got to go along to the White House to help produce an interview with George W. Bush at that time. And so that was like I like to joke that was like my high point of my journalism career was like right when I started off. And it's all been downhill from there.
Oh, come on.
But I have a picture in my parents' house somewhere of like me and George W. Bush and the two cameramen and the reporter, Lukman, who was with Arabiya.
Oh, wonderful. That's an awesome experience. So how did that work? Did you have to get vetted first, or the background check or whatever?
I don't really know. Like I remember it was a possibility because like the station chief, I don't even remember his name. He said something to me the day before. He was like, "Why don't you like give me?" He's like, "Show me your like." He took a picture of my driver's license or something like that, and he was like, "Why don't you like just in case like you go on this?" And I had been working hard for them for a while. I think like 2 semesters. This was like towards the end of my second semester, or at least like my second semester with them. If again my memory serves me correctly, this was like, gosh, like 20 years ago now. So I knew there was like a chance that it would happen. And then like I went to work the next morning, and they were like, "Hey, like you're in." And then I sat down with Lukman and helped him. I mean, he was fluent in English, but it wasn't his first language. And so we actually worked out like the questions that he would ask and like how to phrase them like to the president. So I was like working with the journalist like on how to phrase his questions to George W. Bush. I was like 20 years old at the time. And then we, I guess they vetted me or whatever before that. And then I went in and we did the interview in the map room of the White House. And I remember we sat around for like an hour or so before the actual interview, and it was like kind of boring. And we just kind of waited. And then whenever his schedule cleared up, he went in. I wasn't in the actual map room. I was in this like a little adjacent ante room with some headphones on, like listening to the interview. And then I would write down like any pull quotes, like any like breaking news or whatever that he would reveal. And then that way, because we were on like Al Arabiya was based in the UPI, in the basement of the UPI building on H Street, a few blocks away from the White House. So we did the interview, and then we would like run right back, and they could like breaking. We just interviewed. Lukman went live in the studio, and that was the whole experience. So it was wild. Like I said, I got a photo of him at home somewhere, and that, a good story out of it as well.
Yeah, and it was a video interview too, right?
It wasn't live, but we
right.
captured it, and then they, broadcasted it from, just immediately after that.
Okay, all right. So your role for that interview is to transcribe live. I mean, as it's spoken, and then
it was more so just to this was the quote, like listen for like the newsworthiest bits.
Yeah,
from Bush.
That's amazing.
And then, he said this, or like whatever, like breaking news tidbits came out of his mouth, I would write that down. And I remember at one point, like I was taking these notes, and one of the like White House staffers like tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked up, and Laura Bush walked by with those two little dogs they have. She was taking them out.
Oh, cool. So I wonder, you mentioned about the taking notes. So did you use stenograph?
No, I just had like pencil and paper. It was really just like I had headphones on.
Yeah,
it was connected to
there's a stenography
mics.
too, right? I mean, I used to say it's like all these codes. I remember that people who transcribe sometimes. I couldn't read. Because it's a spatial writing, spatial language. I don't know. So.
I actually wonder where my notes are from that. Hopefully, I kept them somewhere.
Okay,
but
all right. So I have always been impressed with people's ability to transcribe live and then to actually know like verbatim. Because me, I have to repeat what I just said like 3 seconds ago. I forgot. So I guess you have to be really like a hyper focus and and I guess everything like happens in slow motion or something.
I try to weaponize my ADHD as best I can.
Wait. You do have ADHD?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with it like a few years ago.
Okay.
But looking back, it was so obvious I had it my full life.
All right. So guys, welcome to, if this is the first time, when I interview sometimes I go everywhere, I promise you, we're going to go back to the... All right. So yeah. So okay. All right. So were you surprised with that diagnosis, or were you like, oh, of course?
Oh no, I was like, it hit. I was like, this is the most obvious thing in the world. Like, of course, it explains everything. Yeah, I was like in therapy, and at the end of the session, my therapist was like, hey, take this test, take this little quiz, and I was like, okay, and I was like, all right, yes. And I give it back to her, and I was like, hey, what was that test for that I just took that, spoke to my life and my whole, internal processes? And she was like, oh, that was for ADHD.
So your therapist didn't tell you?
That makes sense. And it's been like a revelation to, take ADHD medication and learn, that process of self-discovery and deconstruction, and just how to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and how to overcome. I feel like we're getting deep here, Will. But I feel like in my own life, right? Like I've always been my own biggest enemy, and so I feel like understand how your mind works and how you function is so valuable and important. So now I can sit here and make jokes about having ADHD or lack of focus, as opposed to years ago when I think it was so obvious and had an impact on my life, but I wasn't even aware that it was, a thing.
Yeah. I think, sometimes, for me personally, I don't know if this sounds bad or not, but I like to have a label, like a diagnosis or whatever, because if there's a label, if there's a diagnosis, that means they have done certain research on it. So I can learn from it. What are my advantages? What are my disadvantages? What are the things that I need to avoid? What are the things that I need to bang on it. I need to make money out of this. If I can only work on a deadline, then I'll make a deadline. I'm going to make a commitment to someone. I'm going to deliver to you in 48 hours, and it drives me to get things done. Or otherwise, procrastinate forever.
Yeah, and then you can work within yourself once you understand how you work and how you work best.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I guess now your superpower.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I could weaponize it.
Exactly. So you had your high, interview in the White House, working for the American University. So what brought you back to Pittsburgh?
Man,
are you like in the classic story of boomerang,
I guess in a sense, yeah. I mean, I love it here. My family's here. Like all my friends are here. And, I mean, I wasn't like a huge fan of DC. Like I felt like it was very transactional in a lot of ways. Like, not that I was like running in circles, but like I was adjacent to like other journalists and other like political types. I was like interviewing people at think tanks. It was just like so transactional, and it was like, what can you do for me? And like, if I can't like, we don't have a network I can tap into or something, like I'm not really interested in you. And so, that's something that I feel like is the opposite of Pittsburgh. And I think that, it's funny, like I had that, experience in college with journalism, but like I always sort of had like self-doubt that I struggled with as well. And I wasn't sure if I had like the talent or skill set to be a journalist. And then so, like, here in Pittsburgh, like I started, I took over a friend's music blog, just as sort of like a hobby, a thing to do. And it was something that I really excelled at. And from there, like I started freelancing some music stuff for the city paper. And from there, started freelancing some music stuff for Next Pittsburgh. Next Pittsburgh, I'm using their mug. Thank you, John, letting me borrow this here at the Hub.
Our neighbor.
Yes, exactly. And then, from like music editor at Next Pittsburgh to city design editor at Next Pittsburgh, and then like did a bunch of freelance stuff for most outlets in town. Started doing, more and more hard news and investigative work. And I mean, just kind of has snowballed from there.
So what can you say, to the audience, I don't know if, I hope so let's start with the freelancing, journalist freelancing. So what do they do? How do they get money? How does it work?
Oh, it's sad.
Like I'm like I remember when I started way years back, as a trying to be a photographer, right? And you're like, okay, why don't you take pictures and it's gonna give you exposure,
Yeah, exactly.
Like, screw
famously.
that, right? So how does it work for journalists?
I mean, it really doesn't. That's like part of the motivation for like these different endeavors that I've taken on in recent years. Is just like it's not in Pittsburgh. It's not like I was a full-time freelancer like in Pittsburgh, like just like writing for the Next Pittsburgh and Public Source and City Paper, technically and Storybird and you name it. And like you're hustling and like maybe making a couple $1,000 a month, and that's like all 1099. And so it's a real pain. And most of us like had to do a lot of gig work on the side. Like that's where Work Hard was great, because like we could take on live stream gigs like on a Friday night or something. There's some like startup weekend hackathon thing, or we would get like contracts for like conventions, for example, like the big like pinball convention down at the convention center. We would get gig work where we would, like run cameras or take photos or do stuff like that. And so, I mean, that's the truth of it. Like if you're an independent journalist or a freelance journalist, and unless you're like full-time, unless you have like a steady gig with some like national outlet, which is rare, or maybe like it's a part-time thing. Like a lot of people have like I would say most people have like other gigs or side projects that they have to do in order to make ends meet. That's the nature of it.
Wow. So it's a tough world.
Yeah.
And are you more comfortable writing? Or are you more comfortable taking pictures? Because I know that you also take pictures.
Yeah.
Especially, I can say that I remember that back in the days, I don't know whether you still do it or not, your concert pictures. It's awesome. I love it.
I appreciate that, Will. I don't do it nearly as much. It's still like every so often I'll shoot a gig and I really love it. I shot like a fest in Mexico City, like at the end of 2024, which I got some really great photos from. I don't even think I've shared those yet. But anyway, like, I think it's the ADHD, right? Like, I can't do both. But I think that, like, I am, I'm a journalist, right? Like, I write, I publish. I love to chase down the scoop. I love to, like, sink my teeth into some lead and see where it goes. Like, that's where my passion lies. But, it is also helpful, like, especially in like that freelance world, like if I'm pitching, I did a piece for like, I don't even know if it was like Epicurious or like whoever it was. If you could pitch them and say, hey, I want to like write this story for you, but you say, I could also shoot it as well. That's one less thing the editor has to worry about. And then maybe you could also like invoice like an extra $150 or something on top of that.
Yeah.
And so that was, you know, really the genesis for a lot of that was like, let me double dip and like make my pitch to this editor like a little more appealing.
Yeah. I remember this, you said that double dip or like a solo journalist, backpack journalist. I remember that NPPA, the news photographer, National News Photographer Association, during that transition when from film to digital, they also push for photographer to also interview people. So it's like, okay, your backpack must have this, and that, and it's like. Some people, of course, were upset because now they have to shoot digital. Okay, that's number one. And number two, that, okay, now they have to do everything, right? They have to carry a notebook, they have to carry whatever. And yeah, people were upset, but then I guess it's like normal, right?
Well, especially the way that people consume news. I mean, like, if I'm writing a story, it almost doesn't make sense like just to publish it online. Like I have to incorporate it into a newsletter at the very least, but then like you got to put it on Instagram, you got to put it on social media, and then it's like you also go to short form video now too, and it's like you almost need to have yourself like as a journalist like doing a short form 60-second video where you explain what the story is and why it's important. That's the way everything's going now. So like you almost have to be like if you're an independent journalist, you have to be a jack of all trades in some sense, unless, you work in some collective sense, and then everybody can focus on their individual skill set and capacity, and then you cultivate something together, which is the dream of this Pittsburgh Manifold project that I'm working on now.
Wonderful. Before we go there, and let's stick for one topic on the freelancing.
Yeah.
So July 14, 2024. And I noticed on your feed that you were reporting on the attempted assassination of Trump, then the candidate. So bring us there. So what happened? So how did you get involved? And also, what was your experience chasing? It's a global story, obviously.
Yeah, it was wild, Will. Like I was at Northside Music Festival in the Northside, of course, like waiting for my date to show up for the evening. And I got a call from another journalist who told me that the New York Times was looking for a freelancer. Well, first he said, hey, like Trump got shot and I hadn't heard yet. And so my mind was still like reckoning and trying to make sense of that. When he told me also that like the New York Times was looking for a freelancer, I guess they'd hit him up. He couldn't make it. So he hit me up and said, hey, like they're looking for someone. Do you want to go? I'll put you in touch with this editor. And it took me like 10 or 15 seconds to like have my mind wrap around like the enormity, if that's even a word, just like the sheer gravity of what I had just heard. And I was like, wait, like who? Like Trump shot and the New York Times, wait, and me, like now go. And I did. And it was wild. And like, I was in, like I said, the North Side. It took me about like, 40 minutes or something to get up there. And I was just talking to the editor on the way up. She's telling me just go talk to eyewitnesses. And I got up there and I ended up at like a Sheetz nearby the site because you couldn't get on to the actual fairgrounds because it was a crime scene. And I just started talking to people that were there. And it was a wild experience. And I didn't really have time. I mean, once like it set, I was just working. I didn't really have time to think about what was happening or really even take much of a breath because like I was chasing down eyewitnesses and then an editor would tell me like, no, go to the police station. And then I would get a call from like someone else. They say, hey, go over to the hospital. And then I heard, go over to this press conference. And I got a text or I got a call from an editor when I was at the press conference that I didn't answer because I was taking notes for the press conference. And then I got a text. They said, call me, leave now, go outside. And they said they had just gotten the shooter's address and they wanted me to go to Bethel Park to see if I could like knock on the door and get a statement from somebody. And so I drove, 90 minutes southbound to Bethel Park, but it was already cordoned off. I was up until like 3 or 4 in the morning that night. And then I woke up the next morning at like 9 or something. And then I got another editor got in touch with me, told me to go scope out the hospital, went to Allegheny General, and then got word shortly after that they needed me to go to, anyway, I had to go to the home of Corey Comperatore, the firefighter who tragically lost his life in the shooting, and get a statement from his family. And so it was heavy, man. It was real heavy to like knock on the door of the widow like the morning after her husband just died in her arms. I mean, that is some heavy stuff. And I mean, to be honest with you, I felt bad like doing that, like knocking on the door.
And probably you were not the first one, too.
I was the first one.
You were the first one.
That's why I think I was expecting like satellite trucks and like all sorts of a hubbub there, but I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating, right? Because, usually like you're an independent journalist, you're working on your own or with smaller newsrooms here in Pittsburgh. All of a sudden, I was like the tip of the spear for the New York Times, and they have this news apparatus behind them, unlike anything I've ever dealt with. And so they're dealing with sources that I can't even imagine. They're getting information 8 levels up, some, I don't know, FBI source, I don't know, I'm just speculating here.
Yeah.
Is giving them this information. And so they're kind of just telling me, bossing me around, say, hey, we found this out, we found that out. Go here, get a quote from there. Yeah. And so I must have been one of the first people to get that information. And so they sent me to that house. And like I said, I was the first person there. And so I don't know, I had heard from another reporter because the next day, I ended up just like scoping out the house in Bethel Park in case the family came out or something. And I ran, there's other journalists you run into and you talk to them. And I think it was like a photojournalist from Reuters like texted me and they said, hey, like when you were at that house yesterday, did they have a no trespassing sign? Because the family had put one up between the time I was there. And then because again, like I guess all these reporters started showing up.
Right.
So it was heavy, but it was an incredible historic opportunity. Like I ended up with a byline on the front page of the New York Times, which is insane. For it to be like me just like waiting to like be with friends at a music festival to like being published on the first page of the New York Times, like in like 48-hour time span. It was wild. And it's something that I will always remember.
Wow. So pretty much you got involved with 2 presidents.
Yeah.
One with the candidate, then, and with George W.
Yeah. I never met Trump, but
yeah, it's related.
Exactly. It was, it's wild.
It's wild. Yeah. So how did you, I mean, I know that because of the time, the time frame was so tight. And how did you introduce yourself? Because you didn't have a chance to give your press pass or whatever, right? So, I mean.
No, they didn't. I mean, I just like went up and like, you mean when I went to that family's house?
Yeah. Because I'm sure they like to know, like, who are you? Where are you from? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you could just tell. I mean, she's devastated, right? Like, I'm sure she didn't sleep. I mean, she just, you could tell how upset she was. And I think I started with an apology, like, like Ms. Comperatore, like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is my name. I'm with the New York Times. Like, is there anything you would like to share? And I think she could see on my face that, like, I don't know, like, empathy or sympathy or like just the human emotion. I mean, you could just feel it from her. And so, it was wild. And then I had this like competing feeling too, because like it was, she declined to talk, and then like the family's pastor came out, or it was her brother-in-law that came out and gave me, or it was her brother, I'm sorry, it was Corey's brother-in-law, it was her brother. He came out and he just said, they were devastated, because of course they were. What else could they say? And then the family's pastor came out and said, like, hey, this is, they want to be like alone with their grief right now. And I said, of course I understand, thank you for your time. But, I walked away, and, it was this mix of sorrow, but then it was also like, then the journalist instinct kicked in where I was like, oh, I have the quote now, like this, we've got what we need for this coverage now. And so I had like succeeded as a journalist in that moment,
Yeah.
But it was a weird feeling.
Yeah.
For sure, to inject yourself into such personal grief. But, again, it's, I don't know, I guess a public service, right? I'm sure there's people who have opined about this much more regularly than I have, and war correspondence and other things like that. But it was, I don't do like as much breaking news. Like I do more like features and investigative work. So to be like thrust into that immediacy of a tragedy in that regard is something that will always stick with me.
Yeah. So when you mentioned that, I got this quotable, or that can stand. I think also that when you're at the White House, you mentioned about, I get the pull quotes that can be used, right? So did you like come up with that, or did you have to send the entire transcription to New York Times and they will pick it, or they just take your analysis or take your opinions, verbatim?
So I like recorded everything. That way I can just go back and transcribe it. And so they, but they would also, so it depended because it was such like a multimedia thing. Like I would just like get quotes from people and I would dump it into Slack, and then they would like incorporate it into different roundups or whatever else. And so it was really this like crazy collaborative process, because like I was one of 4 people on the byline for that like Comperatore story. And I got, a quote from the family, and then right from the family, I went to the Little Buffalo Township Fire Department where he was a member, and then talked to his old colleagues there who were showing me photos of him and everything like that. And so and then there I went to his church to try to get a quote from someone like, another parishioner or anything like that. And then so from there, I would just like assemble, I would give them some quotes, and then they would ask me like, oh, give us like a couple paragraphs too of like color and description, where you are, what it's like, that sort of thing as well. And so and then I would take, of that story, I had like about a quarter of it or whatever. And then editors unseen would take my section, and then there was like another journalist working here, there's another journalist like in DC, whatever, and they were all taking it from different angles. And then, like I said, editors unseen would take these different parts and craft it all together. And so, yeah, they didn't like, they could, go back and verify my quotes if they needed to, but, it was really like, this is breaking news. So it was like, get it, transcribe it on my phone. It's so funny. Like I was doing most of this stuff like on my cell phone, just like talking to people, uploading it to transcription service, typing up some paragraphs in the notes app, verifying the quote with the transcription and listening to it, assembling like 5 paragraphs about, the family, what they had to say, where they were, those details, and then sharing it with an editor on Slack who would then like morph that into what the eventual story was.
So now let's combine that. I think it's a good juncture here. You describe about probably the editing process. They use your paragraph or use your quotes, your stories, and then combine it with everything else, and then to make a long form news about the attempted assassination. And at the same time, I like to connect this with what you write. You also like to write technology piece, right? For example, technically, you have now you also, I think I remember, if I'm not mistaken, seeing you interview people at the Pittsburgh Robotics Network, right? So
that was a side gig, Will. That was a side gig. We still got a couple little side gigs here and there that I pick up as I can to make ends meet.
Right. So basically, you're in tune with the technology, right? So
as much as a 40-year-old can be.
So how do you feel as a journalist with the AI? The AI is gonna come. And they are going to do, I don't know where you're going to get involved in our supply stream or value stream of having a source, story, and then a final piece. So what's your take? What's your gut feeling, or whatever your opinion is about the role of AI in journalism in the future, in the near future and the long future?
I use it for research. Definitely. I think it's very valuable as a tool in that regard. It's basically just like replace Google for me. I think it's like a better Google. Like, if I'm just doing, research on whatever, I can just get a nice catalog of articles on a certain subject and perspectives. And it has sped up that research part of it. Insofar as the journalism itself, like, I'm not worried that my job is at risk. I think that, like, for deep dive reporting, you're still out there gathering information from sources, and that sort of thing, like, AI can't do. And so, if you're just doing some, lifestyle, 6 cool coffee shops in Pittsburgh that you may enjoy type of article coverage, then yeah, like you should probably be worried because like, I could type that up on my phone and have that in like 20 seconds. And it's going to be like pretty good. Is it going to be soulless? Yes, because some machine is like recommending which coffee shops you should go to. But I think that like deep dive reporting, enterprise reporting, it is something that is not going to be replaced with AI. Another thing I'll say is that another benefit to it as well is with data processing. You have to be careful with like what you upload to AI. Like you don't want to upload any like sources names or anything like that. You want to, be thoughtful and mindful about what you actually upload to AI because you really want to give open AI, whatever it is that you're dumping in there. But like that being said, like I've used it before. Like if I found open records request and I get, some 200-page PDF from some government agency and for whatever reason, I can't control F on it and search for certain keywords, and I got to look through each page. It's much easier to just upload that information to AI and just say, hey, what's this all about? And they, at least from there, they'll break it down, and then I could go in and look at like certain pages that, seem especially critical. But in that regard, I think it can be a very valuable tool.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So, I think probably some of you guys been checking out or listening or watching the confos. I use AI for my YouTube summary or YouTube descriptions. It saves so much time because it just summarizes what the video is saying, right? So if you want to see it, then you go, you go and look at the long form video for 1 hour if you want to. But sometimes, it's really useful rather than, I'm not, as I said that, I'm not really smart enough to know like exactly and then write it down verbatim and then I put it down as a quote. Like, I use AI to do that. Though I know that it's not perfect. And sometimes that, hey, I don't, that's not important, why you put it there? So I have to delete it. I have to put my own thing. This is the important part. But it saves so much time.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it comes down to is that time-saving aspect. Though, ironically, like I used to have, one of the like side hustle gigs that I had was like writing show notes for podcasts, and I would like listen to the podcast and then write like a couple paragraph long description of it and get paid for it.
Right.
No one's doing that anymore.
Right.
So, but I get it though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like it's like anything, right? Like what are you going to focus your time on? And if you're using that time, you would be, if it took you an hour to, do something that really isn't all that important in, the grand scheme of things. If you use that to put more care into how you're reporting or storytelling or whatever that is, then I feel like that's like a net benefit. But if you're, if you're doing that and then it's kind of like, I feel like at some point there's going to be a delineation of like what people are okay using AI with and what is not okay to use AI with. And I think that like society is grappling with that. And I think that those like through lines are being discussed and debated personally.
Yeah. And I think also like if you put not fine print, but just like you annotated that this is AI generated or it's not, just like when you go to the museum and then when you take, I'm not sure if they still show it or not. If you look at the pictures, sometimes like, oh, this is a digital photo, or this is, printed, like with the paper, I don't know, like a silver, whatever, gelatin, whatever. Or if it is like you put some Epson printer and you print it out, right? So you have to put it there so people either appreciate it more or they know the difference, right? So, so it's good. As long as it's a full disclosure, I think it's fine, right? It's okay. So, let's talk about your new. I don't know whether it's new. I remember you guys first time. I mean, when you're here, it's a Pittsburgh Independent.
Yes.
Right now you change into Pittsburgh Manifold. Right.
Yes.
So why did you change it? I mean, what happened?
Yeah. So it's sort of like a natural evolution. I launched the Pittsburgh Independent for the reasons that we described earlier. Like I was doing some freelance news stuff for Public Source, and I would do some freelance craft beer stuff for Craft Pittsburgh, and then I would do something for you, and then I would do like a music thing for the city paper or whatever. And I was getting like a couple $100 here, $100 there, and it really wasn't a sustainable way to go forward. At the same time, I saw that there was a void in the Pittsburgh media market, like both on the hard news and the culture front, which is where I sort of excelled with my enterprise reporting. And so I was like, all right, well, let me get this started up, and it will, we'll get some, recognition for it, and then we'll, kind of like figure out the business as we go. I was like, well, if you build it, they will come. And, that didn't last too long. That was like a lot of work. The feedback was great, especially early on. Like we were putting out like at least one newsletter a week, a lot of original content and reporting. People were, giving us like PayPal payments and everything and really supporting it. We did a print issue to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, and that was really well received. We had like 80 people come out to like Bottle Rocket on like less than a week's notice for a live podcast reporting with CityCast. And then, it was just too much for me like to do. And the same sort of problems crept up where it was like, all right, well, how do I make a living from this? And it was like this chicken or egg thing where it was like, all right, like we need content that we can bring on advertisers. And it was like, well, we need advertisers to be able to pay freelancers or pay myself to do content. And so I remember it was like 2013 or 2023 or 20. That doesn't really matter. It was a couple years ago. Like I was doing like a big freelance piece for like a big freelance client. And it was like this more like an academic thing. And I was like spending time on that instead of like my investigations into the privatization of Schumann Juvenile Detention Center here in Allegheny County. And it was just because, I was getting more money for the freelance thing than I was for like investigating this private detention center. And it was like, it's a shame. And that's just how it is sometimes. So all that is to say, I've always been interested in news collectives. I've always been interested in like the co-op collective model ever since the Work Hard Pittsburgh days. You had asked about Work Hard earlier. I think that like there were a couple different perspectives with like how, what that collective vision was. And there was always like a tension, like there always is, between like pragmatism and idealism and, actually running a small business. So all that is to say, recently we got our nonprofit fiscal sponsorship through both New Sun Rising here locally, but also through Tiny News Collective, which is a nationwide group of aspiring community-minded news sites nationwide. And so now that we have that set up, it made sense to, especially as I'm assembling and working collaboratively with some other independent journalists who either have their own publications or independent journalists in and of themselves, it made sense to represent that and reflect that in what we were doing, and to also demonstrate that this was more of a collective effort instead of like a singular effort. And so Manifold means like a singular construct that is made up of several different component parts. I'm paraphrasing here, but it fits a collective vision and model. And if you look at things, not even just nationwide, but like internationally, like all of the successful independent news sites that exist and that are taking off have some sort of collective or cooperative model internally. And you could point to different models like Tiny News Collective. Not they themselves, they're our nonprofit fiscal sponsor. They've been tremendously helpful. But a lot of news sites, such as like Coyote Media Collective and the 51st State, or the 51st in DC, they're under Tiny News Collective's umbrella. And then if you look at something like Hellgate out of New York City, which is like a popular independent news site out of New York, they also are employee owned. And so, not only sort of, it's idealistic to have this like a collective ownership model, and like those details we're still figuring out and having those discussions amongst ourselves. But pragmatically too, it's kind of the only way to really go about doing it is to get like a small sort of cohort of people with complementary skill sets who, like you could do the photos, I can do some editing, you can do the ad sales, whatever.
Right.
And then we have some sort of shared ownership stake. Maybe that's proportional based off of time you spent on the project or whatever that may be. And then you can, I mean, again, we can get donations now through Tiny News Collective. And so we've been fortunate enough to get some donations in already to support some of our early freelance work, which has been great. And then, you know, we could also apply for foundational grants, which is a huge help because we can do that before the nonprofit so sponsorship. We could also get advertisers too. And, you know, we could also, you know, we're looking at doing some sort of like membership campaign. Maybe there's like a recurring thing and you get like access to events that we have. I mean, these are all the discussions that we're having and planning out now. You know, especially with the city paper shutting down,
right.
We feel like, I mean, not even to mention the Post-Gazette, but like as sort of an alt weekly in spirit, I think that's what we're going for, both with like the hard-hitting enterprise news, but also covering the city's vibrant music, arts, and culture scene. So I think like that sort of ethos, you know, is kind of like what a lot of the most successful alt weeklies have really embodied. And so we feel like, especially now with the city paper having gone belly up, I guess, like we feel like we could step into that role, maybe even have like a regular print issue in the near-term future as well.
Yeah. I think you're right. So let's take a look here. Let's. I put it up for the audience as well.
Yeah, look at it.
The website.
Yo, shout out to Sick Day Design who designed the site for us. I love my favorite part's the eyeball. When you scroll, the eyeball moves. Now, if you just like scroll down, scroll, look at it.
All right.
Yeah, like it's looking at the site as you go.
Cute.
But you can see, and we haven't been publishing quite as much again because we've been, you know, working on the business side of things. Right. Imagine that that would actually be sustainable. Okay. But
let me ask you one. Sorry, I interrupt.
No, fine.
Okay, so considering that this is like a collective of, you know, several individual independent journalists, so who had the decision to have the first news on the top?
So, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm doing most of the editorial side right now until we have like money to pay people to like do this sort of work. And also pragmatically, like even if like, you know, I have freelancers that like I pay for content, but you know, they're not getting paid to decide like where on the website like a story would go or whatever it may be. So, I mean, I don't want to be doing all this stuff in the future. Like, but there isn't money now to pay someone to like do all like the editorial side and to load stuff in to you know, the CMS and everything like that. But those are the crucial discussions that we're having to decide like, okay, how do we decide like what the editorial priorities are? And I mean, I feel like the way this works most successfully and the way it has worked at its best is that everybody sort of does what they're best at. Like we have Ben Gibbons, who runs Board in Pittsburgh. He's been covering local music scene probably more than anybody over the last 5 years. He's doing music stuff for us. I mean, that's his beat almost. And then we have Emma Riva. She does arts and culture reporting. She runs Petrichor. You know, she's going to do, you know, more art stuff and because that's her wheelhouse. And so the idea is that everybody comes with their own special skill set. You know, I'm doing more like enterprise and investigative work. And then we take all of those and we piece them all together. And then, you know, we have a whole corpus or body of work that is, again, emblematic or representative, like what an alt weekly would put out. But, you know, again, we have some like early advertisers that are coming on. We're starting to get some donations in. So we could actually use that money now to pay freelancers. And then, you know, once we give people like a little bit more money, then I feel like it's worth their time to like invest into like those more esoteric, but still important conversations about, you know, like story placement and that sort of thing. So it really has been like a piecemeal effort. And, you know, I'm excited to see where things go. I think that people are excited for this and we've gotten like a great response on all the content we've put out so far. And I think that, you know, content ultimately is king. And I think that we're going to put out, you know, quality, interesting, compelling, meaningful enterprise reporting, both on like the news front and the arts and culture front that are going to compel people to, you know, check us out regularly.
And how often are you planning to have this refresh or news drop?
I mean, so we're going to have like weekly content starting in March. And that way we'll have, a consistent day with the newsletter. We'll have like a consistent breakdown of stories. Like we've been doing it piecemeal now, like as we've been getting things up and running. And then we're also deciding if we want to do a regular print issue, maybe like quarterly for the rest of the year as well. And so again, like that is what's exciting about this too, is that like there are so many different opportunities. I mean, like to the Pittsburgh media landscape right now, I think is wide open, and there really is space for everybody, honestly, with the Post Gazette and the City Paper going belly up. So I'm excited for us to, establish our footprint and to complement the great reporting that's already going on here in Pittsburgh by a lot of really talented and dogged journalists.
Do you think that with the number of newsrooms, I put the quotes there, in Pittsburgh, would they be able to collaborate, or are they just going to fight for this empty space right now? People are going to be, okay, my Rolodex is thicker. My content is, I can produce, 3 every day, or whatever, right? So trying to hustle, or, everyone is trying to climb to the top. So how is that going to play out?
I mean, we are like competitors in so many ways. I mean, we're all sort of looking for different, we're looking for advertisers. So, I mean, yeah, there's no escaping that. But, again, like I think the way that we're going to distinguish ourselves is by putting out quality, meaningful content that ultimately like the consumers are going to be the ones that decide like what is successful and what isn't. So, like that sort of thing, I think you just have to have confidence in yourself and in what you're putting out, and then it's going to like be meaningful. But I think people can tell like if it's like authentic, meaningful content, or if it's just like designed for clicks or whatever it may be.
Okay. So that brings up to something that you did, I think, last weekend.
Oh, this thing. Yeah, this was wild.
So Pittsburgh New Media Smackdown. I mean, yeah, it's gonna relate it to like a hustling to the top. So, so I think so. Can you tell me more about that? So how did it go?
So this is hilarious. We were going to screen a short documentary on January 31st about the B-25 bomber that crash landed in the Monongahela River in 1956. The 70th anniversary of the crash was on January 31st, and so that's when we were going to screen the short documentary. Honestly, we just need more time. Like, we're still waiting to hear back from FOIA requests. I mean, they always take long, but like the government shut down for a while, and that pushed stuff back even more. We're still waiting for some archival data. There was like some data we were after that was corrupted, and we're like waiting on this company to release it now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, we had this warehouse space up in Allentown that we were going to screen this documentary in, and we're like, all right, well, what are we going to do with it? We're like, maybe we'll have like some event or something, who knows? And then we saw that Pittsburgh Tomorrow was hosting a journalism panel at the Heinz History Center with sort of all the, bigwig publishers in town. And it was sponsored by U.S. Steel, and it was $20 a head. And, it kind of, I wasn't the only one, but there was like a lot of journalists, I think, who felt some type of way about that there was like this paywalled media event about the future of journalism that seemed to be very top down. And so it compelled us, I talked to some other collaborators, and we were like, what if we do our own media panel and we have it made up of independent journalists and small independent publishers, and have people who, are younger than 40, and what about we give them a panel and a voice too? And so the whole thing came about on pretty short notice, but we felt like it was an important corollary to this top-down establishment media panel that was that happened like 2 days before ours. And so that's how it came about. And then, the people that own the warehouse space, they were like, well, it would be easier for, it's kind of a pain to tear down the wrestling ring to have an event there. Like, would it be okay if we kept the ring up? And we're like, oh, it's better than okay. Like, this is the theme now. And so we ended up having the panel inside the wrestling ring. And I moderated it. And then we had a great group of panelists. We had people from Deja, we had Mark, or we had Deja Magazine, we had Petrichor, we had East End Print, we had the former news editor Colin Williams from the City Paper, and we had Natalie Bensavenga as well, independent journalist. And then it was Emma Riva from Petrichor, Mark Bloomley from Deja, and then Ann Belser from Print. And so, again, it was a nice collection of independent journalists, small hyper-local publications. Mark's only like, he's like in his like lower 20s, Emma's in her mid 20s. And we felt, again, that it was important to provide a different voice and perspective than the one that was being provided, at this sort of establishment media panel.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we had it inside the ring, and we actually had some wrestlers from 880 Wrestling. They came and interrupted the panel. It was wild because we did the intros. Like I introduced everybody. They came into the ring. We did like a round of questions about their projects. And the question that I really posed to the panelists was, there was all this talk at the Heinz History Center panel about like, how are we going to save journalism? There was a lot of hand wringing. And I posted them instead, like, not how are we going to save journalism, but why? Especially now, journalism has such a critical role in society, and it faces a lot of existential threats, and there's a lot of crises that are happening in our time right now. And so I think that demands not just a question about how we're going to save journalism, but ultimately, like, what are we really doing here when it comes to journalism? What is this really all about? And so I was glad to share the stage with those people. And so again, we started with that question, the why. We got interrupted by some wrestlers who did about like a 5-minute thing with body slams and kicks and everything like that.
Yeah.
We got back in the ring, talked for another 20, 30 minutes. And then Pilcrow the Goblin, who was playing a zombie journalist character, interrupted the panel, all done up like a zombie, and started asking questions and lurching around. And then we ended with a Q&A. So it was an extraordinary time. We had live music from Chameleon Tree. We had live projections from Nishi Tapes. And it was a really cool event. Like, I didn't know most of the people there, honestly. Like, it was a lot of people who just heard about it through various channels, who read about it in the CityCast newsletter. And it was a lively discussion. And I think that it was very well received, and it was a lot of fun too. And so I'm really happy that we did it. And I think that, again, it was an important corollary to demonstrate that there are alternatives. There was a lot of talk at this other journalism panel about kind of like waiting for billionaires to like give money, waiting for the foundations to like just step in and give money to save local media. And, there's a lot of strings that come with that. And so it was really cool to feel the energy and excitement and the conversations that happened at the end of our event between different journalists and community members, to really see that, hey, there are other methods available to sustain different types of news outlets. And I think there's a sort of imperative to it as well.
Yeah. I can see that the easy answer is always like, oh, just throw in some more money, and it will solve everything. But no, not really. Just take a look at our K-12 education. We've been throwing money at it. So, but yeah, so it has to be, money is important, but something has to change. Something fundamental has to change. We're not even talking about AI yet. We have been trying to go back to journalism golden age, right? But it's never going to go back, right? So we have to change to something new. So yeah, fascinating. So what's your number one takeaway from the event, from the journalistic perspective?
I mean, there is an appetite and an interest and an excitement around independent journalism. I think that people are tired of the same constructs and narratives. And I think that people are looking for something that is engaging and relevant to their lives, and yet, still also scrupulously produced and done for the right reasons. I think, again, it gets back to that why. Are you cranking out content because you want a big social media following and you think that's important? Or are you writing stories that are about the most pressing issues of our time today? And, again, like we all have our niches, and, we all can contribute with, what exists in our wheelhouses. And again, like, that's why I'm so excited. Like, I don't, if they're, Pittsburgh Independent, like if it was just like my content and it was all just like, this like enterprise reporting, I think that'd be a little dry. And so to, again, like any successful alt weekly, you're going to have the hard news part, but you're also going to have like the uplifting parts as well. And I think that, this event that we had was really emblematic of that, because, we had a independent Pittsburgh musician playing music, like, before and after the event. We had an independent Pittsburgh artist doing the live visual projections during the event. We had independent wrestlers and performers interrupting our event. And so, and it was more of a happening. And then the panel itself was lively and engaging. And, we had an opportunity for, young journalists, like in their, lower to mid 20s, talk about the issues that are facing them and what they think about media in Pittsburgh today and the establishment and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then, again, like we had Ann Belser on, who was able to give the she was at the Post-Gazette for decades, and she was able to give the perspective of, running a print hyperlocal publication. And then again, Natalie Bensavenga, like about how independent journalists are more crucial now than ever before, or I would say not even more crucial, but they're taking an outsized role. And how do you balance, that with a lot of the influencers that are out there? And so we were able to, again, because we had this outsider perspective, we were able to talk about, I think, like a lot of meaningful and pressing things that are conversations that I think people have amongst themselves, but don't typically get elevated, to like a quote unquote, like media panel level. And so I was heartened to provide a platform for that conversation. I'm glad that there was a robust turnout on not that much time. People were really interested and excited for it. And I think that it just confirms like all of our intuitions are correct, that if you give people something interesting and compelling and meaningful, they're gonna, come away impressed and want to support and encourage what you're doing. And I think like I felt great after the event. I was so happy with how it played out. I was so happy with the dialogue, and everybody had fun too. Everyone had a great time. And then everyone stuck around afterward to have conversations about media and all these things. So, I was glad to like, throw a fun event. And you had asked Blanket like all the way back to your original question, right? Like, what did I take away from it? I couldn't have done any of it without the help of so many people. I had support from videographers, again, like these musicians and artists, all the panelists, like even like my dad, like picked me up and my colleague from one event and then like drove us to the event in Allentown, because he was like in the neighborhood and I was still snowed in. So like it really, you talk about like a collective, or you talk about a co-op or community, whatever that is, like that was really what I felt a sense of. There was, especially at the end of the conversation, there was a lot of talk about like, how are we going to work together? Like, shout out to WESA. One of the guests at the Q&A portion, it was someone from WESA, and they raised their hand and they said, how could we work with you and help you and be better partners when it comes to, like small and independent publications. And so, we started these conversations like at that event. And so I think that like that community aspect of it, I think that's where the success of it came from. And I think that's what I'm going to take away the most, is that it's only going to be successful if it's a group of people like working together. Okay,
wonderful. Congratulations on that. So I'm really glad that, it's all good. It sounds really good.
Thanks, Will.
So, and then I also saw from your website that you have this, let me just cut away to the screen. The bomber. So what is this about? I mean, are you going to be a filmmaker as well, or what's going on?
ADHD, right? We'll do a little bit of everything. No, so basically, this was the reason why we had the warehouse. We were going to do a short documentary about the Mon bomber, about the 70th anniversary. We were working on we're still working on the short documentary about the plane and the mystery. For those of your watchers who don't know, there was a B-25 bomber that crash landed in the Mon River January 31st, 1956. Routine training mission. 2 of the 6 people on board passed away. They perished in the icy water.
Should we watch it?
People don't want to watch that. They can watch it afterwards. It goes on for about like 3 minutes, so I don't want to watch it now. But long story short, they never found the plane, and it's been this enduring mystery ever since. And because of that, it's just this fascinating story, and we got super into it. And one of the most interesting developments is that we worked with a Pittsburgh underwater autonomous vehicle company called Aquatonomy, and we actually scanned the riverbed where the plane is believed to have sunk. And so as a result of that, we have some high-res scans of the riverbed, and we're going to compare that data with the data that the B-25 recovery group gathered 20 years ago. And so we can compare the riverbed at those 2 times and see if there's anything that's still there, anything that wasn't there, anything that's sticking out that looks interesting. And so, we're combining this, I'm doing FOIA requests and archival research. We're comparing that, so I'm doing it on that end. And then we're also doing this short documentary, but also the scientific exploration, the actually scanning the riverbed with Aquatonomy. And so we're sort of attacking this from both ends. And, regardless of how this plays out, it's become this fascinating bit of Pittsburgh history and lore and culture. And I think that even capturing that is valuable and worthwhile in and of itself. But who knows? We'll see what ultimately comes to pass in the end. But we definitely have some new and exciting information to share. So stay tuned. I think that's going to premiere probably in the late spring now. They give us more time again to get those FOIA requests back and do some more archival digging as well.
Wonderful. All right. So shall we see? Shall we watch?
No, we don't want to watch that.
All right.
We don't want to see that. They can go on the website if they want to see it.
Okay.
We have the domain name monbomber.com, monbomber.com. So if people want to watch it, and they could also, there's a link to our donation page as well. Like I said, now that we have a nonprofit physical sponsorship, people could donate to us, just to help the documentary.
Where is the link?
Donate, bottom right there, to the right. Maybe I should make it bigger.
There.
Yeah, but if you donate to us, though, not only does it help us with the short documentary project, but it also helps us with just our regular reporting as well.
All right.
So, we're really grateful to be able to tell this story and to also tell meaningful, compelling stories, for the greater Pittsburgh region.
Wonderful. Great to have you here and hear all your stories and your journeys, and good luck to you. Good luck to Pittsburgh Manifold and the fellow journalists who are working with you and collaborating with you. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Will. It's really been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Always a pleasure to catch up with you, and I wish you all the best with your endeavors as well.
All right, same here. Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
All right.
Thanks, guys.